Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
Last week on the Worry-Free Retirement, we shared why the financial world does not want you to spend your money during the phase in retirement I call the second half of life. Today, we'll examine the fact that if you don't spend your money now versus later, you may end up with more money than you know what to do with.
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the Worry-Free Retirement, with your host, nationally recognized retirement specialist and six-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
Money. It truly is a funny thing. As I've counseled thousands of savers over the years, one of the more interesting observations is this. While savers are very good at saving money for retirement, those same savers oftentimes have trouble spending it once they retire. And as a result, many one day find themselves later in life with more money than they know what to do with. This perplexing phenomena of finding out that you have more money than you truly need is a shocker and can sometimes even create regrets in the minds of those in the second half of life that they waited too long to spend and enjoy this money. I mean, let's face it, when it comes down to it, as you grow older, what in the world are you really going to be spending money on? Well, to answer this question, I'm going to share with you several case studies of what happens as you move into the second half of life and why you need to know this before you wind up with more money than you know what to do with. So, let's get started. Well, welcome folks to the Worry-Free Retirement, and yes, I am that little man in the sweater vest, saving and spending specialist and full-time fiduciary, Tony Walker. And today, before we share with you the likelihood that you could be one of those savers who winds up later in life with more money than you know what to do with, let me introduce two young lads in the Worry-Free Production Studios who have more time on their hands than they know what to do with. America's favorite financial sidekick, Mr. Aaron Orander, and Louisville, Kentucky's most laid-back graphics artist, Mr. Derek Hudson. Okay, have you ever heard someone say, that guy or that gal has more money than they know what to do with? And while these comments are usually reserved when referring to multi-millionaires who really and truly couldn't spend all the money if they tried, having more than one knows what to do with can also apply to many savers I meet who appear, in their minds anyway, not to have a lot of money. Yet, after I put all of their accounts and income needs into our proprietary software, some of them soon discover that they do in fact have more money than they know what to do with. You see, folks, money and how much we need is relative to how much we think we have. I guess that's why I enjoy my work so much, is that I get to figure out what someone is wanting to do with the rest of their lives and make sure that the money available to do that matches with their goals. And seeing as though I've personally met in person with more than 15,000 savers, many of whom are already in the second half of life, my experience becomes of great help to these savers that they cannot spend and enjoy this money before they have met me, but that they have worked so hard to create. On last week's show entitled, Why Nobody Talks About the Second Half of Life, which, by the way, for those of you who missed it, can be viewed in its entirety at youtube.com and by simply entering Tony Walker Financial. Anyway, this show exposed the conflict of interest that currently exists with the financial world who does not want you to spend this money. In other words, they are always going to tell you that you don't have enough, and of course, why wouldn't they? Let's face it, the more you take from them to spend and enjoy, that means the less they get to make in fees and commissions on it. And to prove that more savers than not have more money than they know what to do with, yes, even after factoring in the horrific cost of inflation today, as savers move further into the second half of life, we're going to find out that they need less and less money. So, regardless of whether you are already in the second half of life or still maybe at halftime wondering how much money you're going to need in the future, stay tuned as we answer this most interesting question: do you have more money than you know what to do with? I'm Tony Walker. You're watching the Worry-Free Retirement. I'll be right back. Did you realize that if you have more than $250,000 in retirement assets, the government could tax as much as 40% of it when you go to take it out? And with current tax rates set to expire in 2025, the taxes you will owe on your 401k could climb even higher. Don't wait until 2025 to see how much Uncle Sam will take of your money. Get a game plan by logging on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Our Tony in the Trenches comes to us from Stan out of Elizabethtown, who asks the following. Tony, I'm hearing more and more about this term fiduciary. Who is a fiduciary, and why are not all advisors fiduciaries? Well, there's a lot of government information on this, and in fact, there's a ton of articles where the government is starting to really clamp down on this very fact that many advisors are operating under the skirts of the law, so to speak, and they are not following the same regulations that we do at Tony Walker Financial as fiduciaries. In fact, let's kind of look at what's going on here in response to this question. On October 31st, 2023, the Department of Labor released its latest fiduciary rule proposal, which it refers to as the Retirement Security Rule. This is really important, folks. This proposal would extend fiduciary obligations to financial professionals, listen closely, recommending and executing rollover transactions. Let's stop there for just a second. So up until this point, a lot of people can call. They're not supposed to do this. It's against the regulations. This is what they're clamping down on. But they can call, let's say they're an insurance agent or an annuity peddler, roll over your 401k to an annuity. Now, the reason that's breaking the regulations and going against the law is because they literally are giving securities advice. When they move somebody out of something, that is advising them. And if you're not properly registered like we are, you're actually giving investment advice. And what's going on with this, what they're really targeting are people, again, selling annuities. All right, so this is a huge issue, which again begs the question, if you're thinking about working with an advisor, especially if it's a large sum of money, why in the world would not everybody be a fiduciary? Well, let's look at that. There's three reasons I've come up with, okay? The first reason I think a lot of advisors don't want to be registered is because it is a very complicated thing to be registered. Number two, it's also just darn expensive to be a fiduciary. Not only do we have to pay these consultants to help us remain compliant, but also a lot of my staff has to perform a lot of duties that a non-fiduciary doesn't have to do. We have a number of staff who spend many hours a week making sure that we're doing things properly so that when the regulators do come in to look at our books and look at how we're doing business, we can remain compliant. Which leads to our third situation, and this is the biggie in my opinion. When you become registered and when you become a fiduciary, what you're doing is you are actually inviting regulators into your practice. And this is why I think many advisors are flying under the radar and they are choosing not to become fiduciaries and by law, thus are not working in the client's best interest. I mean, when you think about it, if you can fly under the radar and not have regulators in looking at your books and looking at how much money you're making and how much in fees and commissions, I guess if you're somewhat unethical, you're going to avoid the regulators. So here's my advice. If the person you're thinking of doing business with is not a fiduciary, then at least get a second opinion from someone such as Tony Walker Financial, who is. Okay, enough of that. In keeping with the theme of today's show of having more money than you know what to do with, let me ask you a question. Okay, we're going to have some fun with this. Let's say you just won the Powerball, and the Powerball is $50 million. Let's just leave it right there for a second, Derek. What would be the first thing you would just blow a bunch of money on? I mean, just go crazy. Well, let's say it's a $10 million mansion, the mansion of your dreams. Okay, fair enough. That leaves you still $40 million that you've got to do something with. Now what are you going to do? Well, let's say you come over to Tony Walker Financial as we record this show in November of 2023. Believe it or not, we can get guaranteed interest rates of 5% or higher. In fact, we have one company where you can lock in a guaranteed rate for 5 years of over 6%, and that's guaranteed with no fees. So under current interest rates, we could do this very easily, which means without even touching the principal, just leaving the $40 million invested, that gives you $2 million per year to do with what you want with the money. That is a lot of money, and probably more money, you'd agree, than you know what to do with each year. So that's a kind of a ridiculous example. Let's put it into real time. This is the kind of stuff I see day in and day out, people responding to our TV or radio show or ads, and they want a second opinion from somebody who specializes in retirement planning. So let's take a look at this case. This particular couple is 75 years of age. They have $500,000 in a 401k. It's been rolled over to an IRA with a broker. We're going to see this in a minute in our case. We'll work on it in just a second. And they're wanting to know what to do with it. They're afraid to spend the money. They're taking RMDs, and that's about it. And as a result, they've got $30,000 in savings, which actually, as we'll see, is getting ready to grow. Next, they've got a house that's $300,000. They have no debt. The next thing, they've got $2,800 coming in on the husband's Social Security. The wife draws $1,800 in Social Security. And ironically, in this example, their monthly expenses to keep the household going are about equal to their Social Security. So in other words, they got this $500,000 IRA that they really don't need, and I'm getting ready to prove to them, in the next segment we'll see this, that it's more money than they know what to do with. But there's 5 keys to this case. Let's take a look at these. Number 1, if you have no debt, this is why savers do not like to have debt in retirement, and if all possible, we're going to help them do that. That's less cash flow you need after tax to make the payment. And most people, when they get into retirement and they don't have a house payment and a bunch of debt, it's amazing how little money they really need to spend, which leads to our second point. What about all the family members? What are they doing nowadays? Well, in this case, this is an important question I ask many people at this age range. How are your children doing? How are your grandchildren doing? In this case, they're doing fine financially, so they don't need any help there. Number 3, this 75-year-old couple found out that the husband was recently diagnosed with cancer. Now, while he's doing okay, what's happening is they're traveling a lot less, and of course, they're spending a lot less due to this diagnosis. Number 4, they don't anticipate any major purchases. As I said, their house is paid off. Apparently, they've got new cars. They're paid off. They just don't need any extra money right now. Number 5, they've realized by watching their savings grow that they're spending a whole lot less money than is coming in the front door. So what's the problem? Well, the problem is that now that they have more money than they know what to do with, and realize that the good times to spend and enjoy that money have maybe passed by, they have to figure out what to do with it. And then you've even got that darn tax tumor buried inside that tax-infested IRA of $500,000 that if they don't spend it or deal with the tax tumor is just going to get passed off to the kids when they die. So how did they get to this point in life? Well, because they failed to work with an advisor who provided them a personalized, written game plan. You see, without a written game plan with a retirement planning firm such as Tony Walker Financial to monitor it, there is no way you're ever going to feel like you have enough money to retire, and thus you're going to continue to just hang on to it. In fact, of the people that come to me for a second opinion who have no written game plan in place, this to me is why they worry. I mean, how in the world are you going to relax and enjoy your money during the second half of life when you don't know when you might run out of money? Folks, it doesn't have to be this way. There is a better option to retire worry-free, and we made this real easy. We call this the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. So if that's you right now, if you've got a large sum of cash, maybe a windfall from the sale of property, business, you've got over $250,000 in retirement accounts, and you're worried about these darn tax laws going up in the year 2025, we need to talk. Just log on right now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, TonyWalkerFinancial.com, or call the number on your screen. Let's get a phone call started, and if it warrants, I will be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. Okay, we're going to take this case we were just talking about. I'm going to get the whiteboard out. I'm going to show you what this person is faced with if they continue on with their money manager versus if they take on the live well, die broke philosophy of Tony Walker Financial and start really using and enjoying this money before it's too late. Let's get the whiteboard out. I'll be right back. Have you recently retired, been laid off, or offered a pension buyout? Has the company you work for moved, been acquired, or closed its doors forever? And finally, do you have a 401k with a previous employer you'd like to move to safer territory? Then take advantage of this opportunity to move your 401k or lump sum pension to Tony Walker Financial. Let's meet in person to discuss your retirement options. Log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com to schedule your free, no obligation appointment. Let us help you today. Earlier in the show, I briefly mentioned our latest and greatest YouTube channel, which hosts all of our past episodes of the Worry-Free Retirement, as well as numerous educational clips. To tell us more about this YouTube channel is my favorite son-in-law and in-house fiduciary and compliance officer, Mr. Trey Juergens.
Yeah, Tony, that's really the reason we created our YouTube channels. We had so many good videos for various topics for savers. In fact, I know a lot of people out there are getting invites to dinner seminars or university seminars like this one. But if you go to our YouTube channel, Tony Walker Financial on YouTube.com, you can search for any various topics you want to learn about.
All right, our Live Well, Die Broke moment comes to us from the Hawkins, one of our clients, who recently purchased this cute little Cavalier King Charles Spaniel Bichon Prichet. I can't pronounce it, but it's the cutest thing in the world.
Actually, it's pronounced Cavalier King Charles Spaniel Bichon Frise, or a Cavajon for short.
The name of this dog is Nellie Bell, who apparently loved her owner's written game plan that we provided them from Tony Walker Financial. She loved it so much, she apparently got in and tore out all the little sticky things that her owners had marked within the booklet. Good thing we saved their retirement game plan on our hard drive. So let's get back to the task at hand, and that's when someone has more money than they know what to do with, but don't know it yet. I'm getting ready to go to the whiteboard, but to set the stage for this, remember we've got a 75-year-old couple, and they've been following this methodology. A lot of people call it the 4% rule, but what backs the 4% rule in terms of distributions is this whole idea of the 60-40 rule, where in general you keep about 60% of your money in investments and 40% in bonds, and it should work out well. Let's see what's happened over the last year though, Derek. As you can notice, 2022, look at this, one of the biggest losses in any one year since the Depression. So imagine you're retired and you're in your 70s, mid-70s, and you're trying to make sure your money lasts as long as you do, and you're going through something like this. Folks, that is ridiculous, and there's no reason to put that much money at risk. Here's how we would handle this. Okay, let's say our couple, remember we have a 75-year-old couple, they have $500,000 in an IRA that's currently with a money manager charging big fees to manage it, plus last year just lost a lot of money. So there they sit, they don't think they have enough money, they're afraid they're going to run out of money, and then here I come along saying, you got more money than you know what to do with. And they're like, Tony, you are crazy. So I'm going to prove it to them. All right, with the 4% rule, the problem is, if you're taking out 4%, let's say that's $20,000 a year, well, you know, while you're 75, what if you wanted more money than that? A lot of people, I suggest, take out more money. Also, these tax rates are very low right now. They're going to expire in 2025. Why wouldn't we even take out more, especially if we could keep it within those lower brackets? This is something we can do at Tony Walker Financial. We have 2 full-time tax certified folks on staff. If we're working on your case, we're going to give you this kind of advice absolutely free. And then there's another problem. What if the market tanks another 20%? And now that you're down to $400,000, well, if you take 4% of that, now your income just dropped to $16,000 a year. Folks, this makes no sense whatsoever. So the 60-40 rule with the 4% income distribution rule of thumb for savers in retirement who are trying to use their money and enjoy it while they still can, this is filled with worry and concern and usually is a disaster for savers. So what's the live well, die broke philosophy? Well, we take that $500,000 and we're going to divide it into 2 buckets, all right? This bucket is through our Charles Schwab platform. which is very liquid, very flexible. We only charge 0.8% to manage and do all this. And we're actually going to link this to your checking account. And actually, for the next 4 or 5 years, we might say take out $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Take advantage of these low tax brackets. Take advantage of taking some trips and trying to do some things with your money, or even giving more of this money tax-free to your kids and grandkids, but quit holding on to this tax-infested IRA thinking you're going to need all this money one day, which you won't. But you say, well, Tony, that sounds all well and good. How am I going to keep from running out of money? What if one of us lives a long time? Whoop, there's the beauty of the annuity, okay? You remember, that's the only product, and we sell a lot of these, that can provide that income you can never outlive. That's right, we call it
mailbox money.
So the mailbox money, folks, is for those periods of time when you really get into your 80s, 90s, maybe even live to 100. It doesn't matter. Once you have that annuity and start that lifetime income, that income will last as long as you do. And here's the point, it's guaranteed. So if you're a saver right now and you're tired of the ups and downs of the stock market, you're tired of the broker telling you might run out of money, good luck. It doesn't have to be that way, folks. You need a written game plan from a retirement planning specialist who works in this stuff daily. That's right, Tony Walker Financial. So here's what I would suggest right now. Let's have a phone call. Let's see if I might be of help. All you got to do is go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. You're going to click on that little red box. We're going to arrange what we call a free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And if it warrants, I'll be happy to meet with you to provide this free written assessment of your situation at no cost whatsoever. All you got to do, again, is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, call the number on your screen. We have offices in Bowling Green, Louisville, and Lexington, and we want to see if we can be of help to you. Well, what does the Bible have to say about more than enough? Well, it has a whole lot to say, and there's some really good truths I'm going to share about why you need to make sure you're using and enjoying this money before it's too late. But first, I got to get a cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas.
WorryFree Music presents the greatest collection of Christmas covers ever assembled.
It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Hey!
Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas. 486 timeless classics across 6 digitally remastered 8-track tapes.
Happy holidays!
Every song fills your home with holiday magic.
Sing ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, dong ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ding ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding, ring ding-a-ding.
Don't miss this opportunity to receive Tony Walker's A Humdinger Christmas, the perfect way to celebrate the joy of this holiday season.
Dashing through the snow, hey, and one horse open sleigh, yeah.
Only $685 plus $3 shipping and handling. Order yours today.
8-track tape player not included. Offer void where prohibited.
And from all of us at Tony Walker Financial, have a Merry Christmas.
Some 3,000 years ago, a very rich king by the name of Solomon sat down and, after adding up all that he'd acquired and accumulated, realized this. The crusty old king had more money than he knew what to do with. A situation he sadly refers to as vanity. You see, as the man who had more than he knew what to do with reflected on all the blood, sweat, and tears that went into accumulating all of this wealth, in the end he realized that not only could he not take this stuff with him into the next life, but worse yet, he would have to leave it to others who might blow it all in one heartbeat. This too, he said, was vanity. And maybe that's how you feel right now. You're at that stage in life where you realize that much of the worry and toil that went into saving all this money for the future was in vain. Because in the end, as I outline in my book, Live Well, Die Broke, you only need so much money to live on, and for sure, you cannot take with you what's left after you're dead and gone. A good example of using and enjoying your money before it's too late is found in the book of Luke, beginning in chapter 15, verse 11, where a very rich man who clearly has more money than he knows what to do with gives half of his net worth to one of his sons, who then quickly leaves the family farm to enjoy some loose living and as a result blows every penny of it. In fact, the plight of this broke young man got so bad that the only work he could find was feeding hogs. Realizing that the family farm was starting to look a lot better than feeding someone else's pigs, the broken son decides that his only hope is to return to his father's farm and beg for forgiveness in hopes that his father will take him back. Upon returning home and approaching his father, much to the son's surprise, not only does the father gladly welcome the son back, the Bible says in verse 22, to celebrate the return of his son, the rich father tells the slaves to bring out the best of the best for his son and everyone else who wished to join in. In other words, he used the wealth that God had blessed him with to bless others as well. You see, friend, the lesson here is this. What brought this rich landowner the most joy was not seeing how much he could stockpile for the future, but rather see how he could use what he had stockpiled and share it with others and rejoice over it. This wealthy landowner realized that to not use the money while he was alive was vanity at its best. But Tony, you ask, I know for a fact that I do not have more money than I know what to do with, so what's this lesson for me all about? Well, friend, the lesson today is not about how much money you and I have in our possession and whether it will be enough to live high on the hog, but rather this story is about that possession that awaits those of us who realize the vanity of this life here on earth and look forward to returning home to our Father in heaven. Certainly, this story is a reminder to get off our wallets and enjoy what we have now versus later, but it's more about the wonderful world that awaits us in heaven and a Father who looks forward to seeing us and blessing us with more than we could ever need or want. So, regardless of whether you have more money than you know what to do with or feeling like you're on your last nickel, you keep the faith and know that one day the worries of the world will end and the good times will begin. Amen? Well, how about you? Are you curious to know if you now or in the future will have more money than you know what to do with? Well, the only way to know that is by getting a written game plan, an assessment, if you will, provided to you by a trained retirement planning specialist such as our firm at Tony Walker Financial. And best of all, to find out how much you'll need in retirement is fast, easy, and comes at no cost or obligation as we provide you this free assessment of your situation. And it all starts with a quick phone call to our office, something we call the free 10-minute fiduciary phone call. And here's how easy it is to take advantage of talking to me, the owner of the company at Tony Walker Financial. You just log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com and you're going to see that little red block. You're going to click on that block, and then our office will contact you to arrange this free phone call with myself. And then after we talk, if it warrants, I will be happy to meet with you in person at either our Bowling Green, Louisville, or Lexington, Kentucky offices. So do it now, especially if you've got more than $250,000 to invest. Folks, we have been talking a lot about these tax laws that will expire in 2025. All the more reason you need to get a plan in place now. So log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com or simply call the toll-free number on your screen. Well, we've enjoyed being with you today, but you remember, between now and next week, if all else fails, you be worry-free and you make it a good one.